Good morning all. I hope you're well. Good afternoon, good evening or good night, wherever you are in the world. What you're about to see is a re-up of a video the Edijester did in 2022, which is an analysis of the philosophy of Manchester Pride in regards to the Pride Festival. It seemed important to have a revisit of this for some of you that have not seen it. I understand that you may not have the time, it's over 20 minutes long, which analyses a particular page from the Manchester Pride website. But I urge you to give it a watch, because I've just re-watched it myself and it's been 2 years, and everything that we see is embedded in this particular document. So I hope that it will be of interest to you. My apologies for those of you that have already seen it. Without further ado, you can now see what's happening at Manchester Pride simply by analysing one page from their website. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Welcome to Just a Minute with me. There are days when you just think things couldn't possibly get any worse, and then they do, and this is one of those days. So we're going to do some discussion here around Manchester Pride. Now, for those of you that don't know, Manchester Pride is an event, one of the major events in the gay calendar. You have Brighton Pride, London Pride, Manchester Pride, all the stuff that comes with it, and we know has been going on for years. I've supported it for many a year until the last 2 years. I've stopped supporting it. And here I'm going to talk to you about something that they've done. But first of all, a message to gay men who are watching this, and I know that some of you are. Get off the bench, guys. We've got a problem. What you have to be aware of is that the groups that you are now supporting are supporting the medicalisation, sterilisation, and it's effectively gay conversion therapy. And I know you don't want to get your head around that because it's a horrible thing to get your head around, but the truth of the matter is you're going to have to. So, come on. You know, it's time. It's time to stop fucking about. Hedonism can wait. Do something different. I urge you, on the back of what I'm about to say, to not give one penny to Manchester Pride. Not one. Not any bar that supports, not any organisation that supports. Do not go, is my advice. Okay, have nothing to do with it and say so. Okay, it's time to get off the bench. Because right now, what you're doing, which is nothing, does to a certain degree to some look like complicity. I understand why you're not doing it, but that's okay. If you're not going to do anything, don't do anything. But have a listen to this, because Manchester Pride has got a gentleman working for them called Dr. Christopher Owen. And I use the term gentleman there in the broadest possible sense. Dr. Christopher Owen has a degree in English literature, which involves him studying the oppression of fictional characters in something called fantastica literature. I'm going to think Marvel, because I'm a simple bloke, you know, I'm not an academic. So I'm going to think Marvel. He's got a degree in Marvel. But it's not just a degree in Marvel, it's a degree in power and oppression, the oppression in fictional narratives. So he's worried about the intersections between Thanos and Hawkeye. What? He's got it from one of those arse end places we used to call universities, if you remember the masturbation in Manchester. What? And then, of course, now we've got this drivel, which has come from this person. He was given a PhD in this as well. You can buy those off the internet, can't you now? Insane. Okay, right, so I've written this for Manchester Pride, he said on Twitter. He hasn't. Right? He hasn't. The bloke's lying, methinks. I could be wrong. Hey. The title of this particular diatribe, which is on the Manchester Pride website, and I've got the links to everything, is in the description of this, so that you can follow along if you want to. You can read the article, go and see it. I've archived it as well in case they take it down. Right, so let's find out why you and many other gay men and those that are attending Manchester Pride have been hoodwinked, because that's what you have. So we'll begin. It's called, most, humans are good, ! Colon's appropriate. It's full of shit, this. On what it means to march for peace, Manchester Pride. They're marching for peace. In war-torn Britain, you know, if they were marching for peace, it wouldn't be about pride, would it? It's not about pride. They're marching for peace. Peace? Right. So let's go, right? Because, you know, I know it's going to be a long one, but stick with me. We'll begin. Christopher says, peace is not an easy concept to define. Well, cheers. Right. mostly because we cannot remotely agree on what it is or what it looks like. Tell that to my mate in Israel, right, whose street was bombed the other night, killed someone. Do you think they know the difference between peace and war? Do you, Christopher? Well, we think of opposite of war as being peace. It exists on a continuum of violence and pacifism. There is no continuum of violence and pacifism. Stupid comment. These people are so binary, aren't they? It's all black and white thinking with them. Emotional violence, economic violence, political violence. Do these count? Not in your binary, not in my idea either. No, they don't count. Violence is violence. We know what it is. When you get a smack in the mouth for being a turd, which I'm going to assume has happened before, you knew what violence was. When they held me down and kicked me and beat me because I was, as they said, a queer, a faggot, I knew what violence was. I knew what violence was. You do too. Is political apathy peaceful? Well, apathy is fairly peaceful. It's also a solution, right? Is political apathy peaceful? There's lots going on in that statement in there, right? Is ignoring injustice an act of peacekeeping? This is anti-racism, right, writ large. This is Ibram X. Kendi, right, and all that extremist totalitarian stuff. That's what this chapter's about, this section's about. Is political apathy peaceful? Is ignoring injustice an act of peacekeeping? He's essentially saying that, it's time for war. That's what he's doing. He's saying, get up, right? And he's saying that there's all sorts of violence. Yeah, I bet, Christopher. Here's a great statement. Perhaps an end to war is not necessarily the start of peace. Wow. Think about that. An end to war is not necessarily the start of peace. Right? That's not what you think it says. It's well written. It's only very short. That's how he could do it. Right? Okay. He's calling for perpetual conflict. He's saying that we are living in a world of perpetual conflict. And he's saying that from the offices of Manchester Pride, where he sat, sipping his coffee with a £600 computer at the end of his wrist, writing shit like this. He's calling for conflict. He's like one of these champagne utopian socialists, He wants anarchy as long as it's in plush surroundings. Next, there are many, many different understandings of peace. Are there? Really? Right, okay. But here are two types of peace I want to think about here. Right? So he's giving you an either or. He's not saying it's complicated, he's giving you an either or. Understand what this is? This is polarization, hidden in fancy language, in Butler-esque queer theory language, so he can queer his message. So it sounds like he's a good person when actually what he's calling for is eternal conflict. That's what he's doing. He's an agitator. He's violence. He's agitating for violence in his words. He's agitating for violence. This is a prevent issue. It's a prevent issue. If you don't know what prevent is, go and look, because you should know. The first type of peace is called narrow peace, which there is an absence of overt violence. Okay, well, I could pretty much go with that. If, overt violence. So if there's overt violence, there must be covert violence. Now, I remember overt violence when I got smacked in the jaw, called a puff. That was overt violence. What's covert violence? Is that where I got kicked in the bum and somebody called me a puff, but I couldn't turn around quick enough to see who it was before they disappeared round the corner? Covert violence. Who did it? This version of peace, which is narrow peace, draws on the view that human beings are inherently violent. You think? You bet. That it is part of our biology. It is. How do you think we got here? Right? Through lots of violence. Lots of it. Right? And then we gradually changed violence for competency and built what we've got, which is wonderful. But you don't like it, do you? We've got to have perpetual violence so that we can bring down this system and bring on your utopia. Isn't that right, Christopher? Tell me I'm wrong, young man. I'm waiting. Ensuring peace, narrow peace, then requires systems of domination and control. Now here he describes a system of domination and control, and by that he means the police and the military force. Less than 100 years ago, the military force saved my and other people's families' lives and ended some awful stuff that was going on in the Second World War. And here he's saying it's a kind of narrow peace. Some people would think you were a disgrace, Christopher. It also requires other systems of domination. The police. They are. It's defund the police. If we're lucky, Black Lives Matter might get a mention later on. What do you think? Will it? Now. Narrow peace. It's like a slide into madness. Narrow peace is an inherently right-wing approach. Wow. Wow. Right? The entire peace that we've had for God knows how long generally, we've got bad things going on in the world. Of course there are, but we're getting better at it. Humanity's trying, for goodness sake, and, we're beginning to understand things. But what he's saying here is that it's inherently right-wing. Right? What he really means there is he's moved the Overton window. So anything that's not how they think with their extremist leftist ideology means everything else is right-wing. Right? That's so they can pick off the stupid people that think being right-wing is wrong when it's put in that way. It's not. The left hasn't left. You haven't left the left. They've left you. This is proof of that. They've left you. Right? So it's right-wing. And according to some idiot I won't mention, right-wing people are more likely to want narrow peace because their amygdala's too big. Neuroscience can help us, he says. Your amygdala, for those of you that don't know, is an artifact from when saber-toothed tigers used to hide in the bushes. Right? Bloody hell, a saber-tooth. Run! Or, those moments in horror films like the hand in Carrie or the head out the bottom of the boat in Jaws or anything that makes you jump. That's the amygdala. It's your fight, flight, freeze response. Come here. It's at its worst, I think, when you believe there's a step that doesn't exist. So he's saying if you've got a big one of them, you're a right-wing thinker. This is biological conservatism. Right, okay, that's great, isn't it? So, yeah, you've got bigger brains, right? So therefore, because you've got bigger brains, right, we perceive others as dangerous if we are having a bigger amygdala. We perceive others as dangerous. Rubbish. It's just guff. Really, just rubbish being spouted. Well, right, it just gets worse. Wait for it. Right, okay. This leads to justifying and maintaining social systems, even if these systems are unfair and oppressive. He thinks he's living in, Nazi Germany circa 1932. They can't do it without hyperbole, these utopians, can they? The amygdala processes motivationally salient information, such as threats, uncertainty, or features of social groups. Actually, no. Nonsense. Cobblers, young man. And thus the bigger it is, the more likely it is for someone to have attitudes and behaviours that attribute legitimacy to existing hierarchical social systems, such as, wait for it, stereotyping, conservative, and meritocratic ideologies. So he's saying that there is a biological reason why people think it's a good idea that we're meritocratic. He doesn't want meritocracy. He doesn't want it. No. It's pure Black Lives Matter. It's pure critical race theory. Right? Critical race theory written in the language of queer theory. Well, the other tit will turn up. Remember the postmodern udder with the three septic tits, don't you? Critical race theory, queer theory, and gender ideology. Well, we've got queer theory. The whole thing's written like a queer essay. And then we've got critical race theory and anti-racism, all the stuff that comes with that. Do you think it's possible? Is it possible that gender ideology may get a look in at some point? Stay with me, folks, for the next exciting episode of Christopher's a Twerp. Right. Narrow peace is unsustainable because it maintains the roots of social conflict. Yeah, really? Looks pretty sustainable from where I'm sitting. It's certainly pretty sustainable from where you're sitting. Sat with your chai latte in your office, you privileged fool. He's talking about broad peace. That's what he wants. This is the other one. So you've got narrow peace and broad peace. It's like a double entendre. Broad peace is a much more left-wing approach. You think? And again, neuroscience offers theories to explain this. Offers theory. Neuroscience spouts bollocks. Left-wing people are more likely to have more likely to have a higher volume of grey matter in their anterior cingulate cortex. He's a literature student who studies superheroes. God, Christopher, you're a really disappointing young man. Do you know that? Oh, that's funny. Right, those with more left-wing brain are thus less likely to see people as a threat and more likely to identify social structures as dangerous. Right, so the world in which we live in, all this is a dangerous social structure because of Christopher's game of grey matter. You numpty, right? Importantly, these two are at odds with each other. He's talking about this as if it's peace. Very clever. This is how the queer theorists work, because they're all mental. He's talking about this as if it's peace. It's got nothing to do with peace. He's saying that the two are at odds. What he means is meritocracy versus equity. What he's calling for is a flattening of everything. What he's calling for is equity. What he is calling for is the same as most EDI departments are. Equity. Right? And everything that comes with it. Right? Everything that comes with the flattening of the human experience. It's an absolutely disgusting piece of work, this. To ensure narrow peace, we must limit broader forms of peace. And to create broader peace, we must disrupt narrow peace. There you go. Disrupt. By that he means violently, if necessary. This is a prevent issue. And so perhaps that is why the division between different political camps seem to be only ever widening. It's not political, Christopher. You're an idiot. It's cultural. You're using a political sphere and you're talking about it in terms of politics, but actually what you've done is pick the whole thing up and stuck it in culture. We know what you're doing. You must think we're stupid. Race, sexuality, disability, which I understand people can now identify into. I identify as disabled. Meet me, you'll identify as disabled. Right, so that's what you've done. Picked it up and put it in culture. It's not political. Stop pretending it is. You're doing that so you can appeal to the stupid lefties, right? The gays. The stupid gay men with their ideas of virtue. And the stupid straight women with their liberal ideas. That's who you're trying to appeal to keep them on side. They're not at odds with one another. They are absolutely the antithesis to one another. You can't have meritocracy and equity. Make up your mind. I know which I prefer. And if you've got any sense, it's the one you prefer too, but it won't be because you haven't got sense. Because you're a privileged bloke screaming into the void. Rather like me. Okay, at the end of the day, we all want peace. Not yours, kid. Not yours. Because what you mean by peace here is war. That's what you mean. What you mean by peace here is conflict. And if necessary, violent conflict. That's what this is. That's what this is. So then, how do we achieve peace? And here we go. When Black Lives Matter declares no justice, no peace, they are stating that without broad peace, there can be no narrow peace. Any peace but Christopher's peace, please. That in a system of injustice where black lives are not protected and valued by judicial and legal systems, he's written this for the states. He hasn't. It's cut and paste job, isn't it, Chris? Own up. Come on, kid. Own up. It's cut and paste. For black people in America. Who's he talking to? This is the UK. This is Pride. This is lots of gay men getting far more sex than they probably should. This is a huge monkeypox spreader thing we're going to have shortly. He's rattling on about black people in America. This means changing approaches to community safety. He's got a link there. I don't know what to. I didn't dare click on it. And so too for marginalised communities all over the world. There are benefits to restructuring historic institutions so that are better fit for purpose and better meet the needs of everyone. This is equity he's calling for, and he's calling for the violent overthrowing of an existing system. This is a prevent issue. You pay Pride money, this is what you're paying to. You understand? Are you getting it yet? This level of systemic change was a key goal of Stonewall riots. Nothing to do with Britain. At all. An early Pride movement. Ah, you have to say that, don't you? See, the early Pride movement. You don't know anything about the early Pride movement. It didn't exist in this country. It was a campaign for homosexual equality. It happened long before you were born. And I knew the men that were there that did it. They're dead now, which is a shame because you could have met them and you might have learned some humility, you absolute upstart. Today, Pride continues to shape cultural belief systems all over the world. Does it now? Not here. Changing historical institutions and cultural belief systems. Do you understand what that means? Changing historical institutions and cultural belief systems. You understand? Are big, long-term projects that require social organising on a massive scale. By that, he means coercion. On a massive scale, he means by collectivism. We all know what that means. It's important to get involved in these endeavours. No, it's not. It's important to get you out of any position of power. The key thing you can do, talk to people who think differently than you do. Yes, I know this is a lot harder than it sounds, but hopefully that will follow will help. Now, here's the, this is unbelievable, right? He's talking about a world of so much pain, right? It's no wonder that the defensive walls go up. So much pain? What pain? What? Pain from what? God, these people. He's talking about interventionist approaches. You've got to get your head around this because it's just unbelievable, right? Right. One such interventionist approach was uncovered by David Brockman and Joshua Kala. What they did was listen. Gosh. Naming their approach reverse canvassing. Right. A team of 56 canvassers went to the doors of over 500 transphobes. Do transphobes have a particular type of door? How did they know? Transphobe? Oh, to the left. Transphobe? No, to the right, yes. Transphobes this way. Are you a transphobe? Here comes gender ideology. See, they can't help themselves. Instead of telling the transphobes what to think or reprimanding them, going to people's home and reprimanding them. That was the alternative. Totalitarianism. Can you see what it is yet, kids? They created the space for transphobes to actively process their own views. Wow. That's Maoism. That's your re-education camps right there. This is Manchester Pride, by the way. They asked each voter to talk about a time when they themselves were judged negatively for being different. I'm not judging you negatively for being different, Christopher. I'm judging you negatively because you have disgusting views. That's why I'm judging you. Right? The canvassers then encouraged voters to see how their own experience offered a window into transgender people's experience. Define it for me, Chris. Define it for everyone. Define trans so we all understand what it means. As opposed to a political vessel that you're using that's hurting lots of people. It's just insane. It's just insane. I refuse, he says, to accept that the size of one's amygdala makes them more likely to be hateful. Do you? Do you really? Right, okay. Or less likely to understand inequality or injustice. No, you don't. You're inculcating inequality or injustice. That's what you need to do. That's what you exist to do. That's what you think you are. You think you're some kind of revolutionary. And inequality and injustice is exactly what you want. Because then you get your constant disruption and your violence. This is a prevent issue. Our struggles and in turns our aims for what? A chai latte? Shut your nonsense, honest to God. Right. Now here comes the killer blow. So I'm just looking forward to saying about this one. And I've only got a little bit to go. Please do try and keep up. Women of YouTube, Twitter and everywhere. Here's one for you, right? And I can see my GC leftist and radfem mates going, what the... before I even say it. So here we go. Right, okay, get ready. Our struggles, and in turn, our aims, can find connections in a variety of ways. Yeah. For example, as I've argued elsewhere, have you now? Fighting for the rights of one social group can often have significant benefits for other social groups as well, such as how the enabling medical bodily autonomy for trans people also ensure abortion access for cis women. Listen carefully, Chris. You have the moral compass of a snake. A flexible uniform policy may support both non-binary people, that's a made-up thing, non-binary people and those of various ethnicities, cultures and religions. You can't help yourself, can you? So you have to force team everything together because otherwise your identitarian doesn't work. That's what you do. So you then go on to talk about disabled people as if you know anything about what that means. And then you say, and so as we march for peace. When do you think he wrote this? Wouldn't be about the time that George Floyd was, you know, really? Was it? Come on, Chris. Oh no. Was it when George Floyd? No? No? Right, okay. Let's ask ourselves what our end goals are and how we hope to achieve them. I know what your end goal is. And now everybody else knows too. And Manchester Pride, if this is your end goal, we have to have words. Yes, there are bad people out there who are doing bad things that are causing a great deal of harm to various communities. Who's that then? Who's that? Women? Women objecting to you and your utopian ideas? You mad, leftist, neo-Marxist, cultural parasite. That's what they are, your ideas, aren't they? Parasitical. But maybe this isn't the characteristics of the majority of people. Oh, but I can assure you the majority of people know what a woman is. I can assure you that the majority of people want to live in peace side by side. And I can assure you the majority of people do not want a constant war, or as you would call it, disruption, in the word of the critical social justice vocabulary that you've obviously ingested. You'd have been better off wiping your bum with it. Maybe if we all start assuming that most, brackets close bracket, humans are good, so the good and bad humans are there. God, your revelations just get better. Then we can be brave in the face of difference. Brave in the face of difference. Gentle in the face of ignorance. Those that don't think like you are ignorant. Are you in for a shock, kid? And loving in the pursuit of connection. I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to connect with you. I just want to get you out. I want to get you out of anywhere that gives you any power whatsoever. Let us choose kindness, and then from there, maybe, just maybe, we can finally find peace. You're not talking about peace, you're not talking about kindness. What you're talking about is ideological fealty. What you're talking about is totalitarian control. You just don't know you're doing it. I don't condemn you for what you've written, Chris, because Hannon's razor applies, which is never put down to wickedness, what you can ascribe to stupidity. I condemn you because you are stupid. And you spit in the face of everything that came before you. You are ahistoric in your understanding. And you live in the lap of luxury in the freest country in the world, and then you sit there and you write something like this, and you think people should praise you for it. Both you and Manchester Pride have committed something disgraceful in writing this, or allowing it to be published. You and Manchester Pride, along with that terrible image that Manchester Pride have put up, advertising the event, which is just more critical social justice nonsense. And I understand that you intend to do what you did this year with what you did with the vigil last year, which was to turn it into a political rally for far leftist ideologues. Manchester Pride, you know, I'm putting you on warning. I'm talking to the Charity Commission on Monday, and I'm talking to Prevent on Monday. You've lost your way. It's not too late. You can row back. There's a few things you can do, but you have to be wanting to do it. Chris wants to talk. Let's talk. I suggest that we get maybe 5 or 6 GC women, 5 or 6 gay men that don't agree with your nonsense, and you speak to them for a change, so that you're not pushing gender ideology, queer theory, and critical race theory. And in doing so, attempting to destroy what is probably the most successful civilization we've ever seen. And I think it is that big. You're part of it. It's not very often I get an own goal so beautiful as this, which is why I had to do what is a very long video. I would suggest, and I put the links in again at the bottom, I would suggest that you write to Manchester Pride. I would suggest that you contact the Charities Commission, and I would suggest you contact Manchester City Council. I'll put the information about how to complain in the broader thingy downstairs. What do they call it? The description. Other than that, listen, you know, I don't want to spoil your Sunday, but my God, if these people have got their hands on Manchester Pride, which they have, they've also got London Pride and they've got Brighton Pride. And they do not represent gay men in any way. So to be clear, I do not support this anarchistic view or the medicalisation, sterilisation and conversion therapy being practised by gender ideologues and the likes of Manchester Pride, who are complicit in the sterilisation of gay youth. You as a gay man might want to think about that. I'm sorry it was so long, but hey, sometimes that happens. Keep jesting.